to OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. Leafs Panthers tonight. Jays down in Houston, starting a series against the Texans. Richard Griffin in an hour. Chris Johnston will join us here in a few moments. It's April Fool's Day. I'm proud of us. We didn't do anything goofy the first hour, right?
Yeah.
We're adults. We're just going to continue to broadcast. And
did you fall for anything today, though? I fell for one thing. There was
Yeah?
something. Yeah, I just, you wake up, you're not paying attention. You see something like posted online and like, that true? And then I thought about it. I was like,
I saw one with the
I
Leafs
was like-
and Phil and Kessel, and
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
saw
I'm
that.
just not buying it. I was gonna
No.
play a prank, but I think I really would have pissed the guy off because he's a salt of the earth guy. The landscaping company above my head right now. I was gonna call the boss Josh and say, I'm at the gym and I just caught two of your guys in my sim room and they took out drivers, golf balls, and shoes, and I checked in the carpenter's truck and they're all in the truck, so what do you want to do about it? But I thought, he's going to get worked up and he would drive down. I was going to get him to drive down here.
that's too
But
much.
I
That's
know.
too much,
I
man.
just said I'm too old for this garbage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do it.
I can't do it. I give credit to my kids. Like, my youngest is really savvy and sneaky. Like, this morning, because it was Easter yesterday, obviously, so there's so much chocolate around.
How much did you bury, by the way?
I was I got the eyes on Saturday night, like my wife, because I guess everything was supposed to be even. Naturally, we got two kids, and I started diving in, and she's like, the math is off. Like, what are you doing? You can't start diving into stuff when there's supposed to be equal
Why didn't
numbers
you just
here.
buy extras, like your extra
I
pig
know.
fund, where you just say, I want this while I'm getting it together?
Right.
so much junk food.
She
though.
should
That's
know
what
better
it
than
is.
that.
Yeah.
I blame her. She should know. She's been with me for a long time. She should know I have absolutely no ability to stop myself once I start down that path.
So you just say, you know what? I want a bunny. I want eggs. I
Right.
want, like, I'm going to go crazy here.
Well, not crazy, but you see stuff and you're doing whatever you're doing and you're like, hey, that looks amazing. I'm getting after that. We're watching the Leaf game and I'm just one-timing things and all of a sudden the numbers are all out of whack. It's like an accounting firm. Like, I'm shaving pennies off the bottom, and somehow I'm going to get caught. I did get caught. But this morning, my youngest, I look over and she's eating chocolate. Before we've had breakfast or anything, I go, hey, what are you doing? And she goes, April Fool's, and just keeps eating. And I'm like, actually, that's pretty smart. I'm like,
That's
you can't
pretty good.
April Fool's your way into doing something, though. But maybe you can.
Yeah, it's not
maybe we need to reverse this whole thing. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to play 36, April Fool's, but you actually play 36. Maybe we need to reverse the whole axis of the universe here in terms of the way we look at it. So I appreciated that this morning, although I had to stop her after that. But I'm like, that's a pretty good play. Start eating chocolate, then claim April Fool's.
The amount of food that was going around this weekend.
Oh,
Like you get, an Easter dinner or something like that. Like, I ate one meal yesterday, but it was lunch that lasted for like 2 hours. Like,
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. You're
Same
just
thing.
stuffed
Same thing.
and full all day. And then you're picking at stuff, and then it's dessert, and it's a little late night snack. Like, it's just ridiculous
No, it
how
doesn't
much
stop.
food you consume in one day, and it's just like it's like you're at a buffet. I just
it's great.
Good workout
It's great,
today.
but you're right. Yeah, today you better get back on it, or else you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got CJ coming up here in a moment. Leafs Panthers tonight. Samsonov will play. Is it Samsonov Bob, like Sammy versus Bob? Is that the story tonight? Is it a precursor for the playoffs? Is it Matthews?
What about
now that he's
Sammy
at
just
60?
keep being Sammy? Because it was nice to goalie another team. Don't kid yourself. The Leafs had a great win, and there was a lot of good stuff that happened that game in Buffalo. They goalied a team.
Yeah,
How
he
many
played
times
well.
have you said in the last 10 years they goalied a team? Not many, man. So there were some saves that were outrageous. That one after the
On
breakaway.
Cousins,
This
on
one right
Cousins,
here.
yeah.
That's
Dylan
amazing.
Cousins.
And you
Yeah.
can't ask a guy to do that all the time, but he looked like he was on his toes. He looked quick. He just looked comfortable. But the thing is, you can't do it for 2 games and then disappear or get hurt. That was National Hockey League goaltending. Some of those saves were outrageous. You don't expect that, or you can't expect that all the time. But once in a while, why not? bail your team out, and goalie the other team. That was a National Hockey League goalie performance. It's got to look close to that for 10 games before I'm buying in. End of story.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
he's got some swagger. He's got some swagger right now, and he swore in his post game, which I kind of thought was funny. But he's a funny guy. But it just, it's. I don't know where you guys are at, but it wasn't that long ago he gave up an 8 spot in that building. And I think that's what the question was, right? You gave up an 8 spot here, and he's like, I don't remember F that type of thing, which is good. I like the fact that he started on the road in that building, because you could say there's some demons there. You could say that, that was the beginning of the end for him. That could have been the end of his career at the NHL level, really. They put him on waivers and stuff right after that, was it not?
That is not hyperbole. Like, his career was in question at that point. Yeah, absolutely. Like, they placed him on. Speaking of waivers, I saw someone point this out over the weekend. Benoit went on waivers. Bobby McMahon was on waivers. Samsonov was on waivers. All of them cleared. They're all playing a huge role. Benoit and McMahon are now signed long term. It's actually been kind of a lucky waiver wire year for the Leafs, where generally it goes the opposite way. Here's Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. It's an interesting, turn of events, isn't it, CJ? How often we used to talk about this guy getting plucked, that guy getting plucked, waivers being a curse for the Leafs. And this year they found a way to get a few guys through that not only have returned to the team, but are playing a pretty big role. And I guess all of a sudden now they're committed to long term.
Yeah, and they've really needed it, too. I mean, the Leafs are pretty thin at this point on waiver-exempt players. I mean, even Nick Robertson now has lost the ability to be sent down to the AHL without needing to pass through waivers. So they, early in the season, I think that's why they load up and sign a guy like Benoit and Lagesson, who they didn't end up losing on waivers. But I think they signed those extra guys, Martin Jones, and because they're aware of what can happen. I mean, there was certainly a period there, and I remember Kyle Dubas at the time mentioning it publicly, where they led the league by far in players plucked off the waiver wire. But when you look at where some of these guys are in terms of the positions they occupy on the team that's, going back to the playoffs again, I mean, this is, you could be watching them star somewhere else right now and wondering what could have been.
CJ, I think the performance by Samsonov, I mean, there's nobody that can argue that it wasn't spectacular, but what do you think the likelihood is of him kind of keeping some kind of consistency? Obviously, they goalied the Sabres, and to ask that every night is ridiculous. But what do you think the likelihood is of him staying hot leading into the playoffs with no dips and no injuries involved?
It's such a tough one to handicap. I mean, I actually feel pretty good about his play because, for me, you go back to pretty much mid-January to now, or certainly start of February till now. When he's played and been healthy, it's been a lot more good than poor performances. And in fact, there's been a lot of great in there too. It's the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is on consecutive Saturdays. One of them was at the morning skate, and the other was that game against Edmonton late, where he leaves the ice in kind of dramatic fashion, and I don't know for certain if you're going to get a healthy run out of him. I mean, the same can be said last year's series against the Panthers, of course. It was Joseph Wall who ends that series as a Leaf starter. I think Matt Murray might have even been the backup by the end at that point in time because of, Samsonov's health situation. It wasn't healthy enough to go. So, I think that's still a little bit of a mystery box in terms of where his health will be. But, I feel pretty good about him, if he's healthy. If you told me he's going to be healthy, how confident are you as a starter? I'm like, well, I think he's done enough here. I mean, he was good in the first round against Tampa last year. He had a great regular season last year, and for the half of this season that he's been back on top of his game after that break the team gave him to start the new year, I think he's been pretty reliable. So this is no one's going to ever be able to feel too comfortable, I don't think, just because there have been some twists and turns there. Kind of reminiscent a little bit of Freddie Anderson in his time with the Leafs, where, when he was at his best, it was hard to argue he wasn't a bona fide number one goaltender for them. But, there was, injury absences for Freddie, the way we've seen with Ilya Samsonov. And I think that's why you got at least two guys, if not three, that you have some amount of faith in, because you're probably going to need them.
CJ, before we get to Saturday's game, can you give an update? Is there, Morgan Rielly, Mitch Marner, Matt Murray's been skating? Like, what the hell's going on there? Like, maybe just, some updates or what you're hearing, kind of, timelines for guys. I think Mitch Marner and Rielly are close to coming back, correct?
Yeah, Marner especially. He's now skated with the team a few times, and wouldn't surprise me if we saw him back as soon as Wednesday's game against Tampa. Rielly had a shorter layoff and obviously less significant injury, but he didn't skate for nearly a week there until today. So maybe it's a little bit longer for him, but certainly, I think he's at the point. If it was a playoff game Wednesday, he could play, and they might not force it in this situation because they got the benefit of, I think, some patience. But it won't be too long before he's back in the lineup. Murray it's a different situation. He's from what I understand, due to soon go in to see the surgeon again, who did the hip procedure that he had back in the fall. And if everything goes well there, he'll get cleared to join practice in full, which will be significant. It's a big step for him if that happens. But, I don't know how long he's going to have to practice, but after missing basically a whole year. His last start actually was April 2nd last year, so he hasn't played pro hockey in a calendar year because of his health issues. So I would think that you're looking at a pretty long period of practicing. Maybe at least look to send him on a conditioning stint to the Marlies or somewhere else where he could play some games. And, there's definitely a world where he could at least be in the mix to play for the Leafs before the end of this season. But you have to imagine how many things might need to go wrong for them to actually want to throw him into a game. No comment on his ability, but just with how little he's played. And so, those are my understanding. I don't think we're going to see Calle Järnkrok again probably until the playoffs. I think that, good chance he'll be ready come game one, but I'm not sure if we'll see him back this regular season. And then the only other injury is Joel Edmondson, and, we haven't seen him on the ice for over a week now. I don't have any firm update on him. I know he blocked a shot at one point the last time he played, but I'm not sure what the timeline looks like for him.
So with all that being considered, Rielly not playing, Marner not playing, Järnkrok not playing, Edmondson not playing, what does tonight's game against Florida mean to you?
I think there's still a psychological element to it if you're the Leafs, especially. These teams haven't seen each other in a number of months. They're going to see each other again in South Florida before the end of the season, and then possibly in 2 weeks' time we're talking about them meeting in the playoffs. So, it's not as simple as, hey, whoever wins this game has got some kind of upper edge. But, I think that there's still, there's going to be familiarity, especially the possibility of them, playing for keeps starting in, 2.5 weeks' time. I think these games carry a little bit of weight, and it's a chance to measure where the Leafs might be better. I mean, two significant differences in the lineup from the team that lost last year to the Panthers are Bertuzzi and Domi part of the lineup. They've, kind of been having a nice run of success here the last little while, so you can sort of measure maybe how that looks. But, ultimately, I think Paul Maurice said it best this morning. I mean, no one's probably going to remember this game if the playoffs open on April 20th with the Panthers and Leafs there. But I think there could be a little bit of institutional memory, especially if one team has its way with the other in these final two regular season games.
Yeah, I think so. And like you said, they play again down in Florida. They got Tampa on Wednesday, then they're down in Florida playing them as well before the end of the season, where Tampa's still only 4 points back. There still is technically a race going on, I guess, both ways. The Leafs could possibly move up. It's not likely. But so could Tampa. And, this week being, I guess, a litmus test, I'm not sure if that applies anymore. Probably shouldn't for the Leafs. They're going to go to the playoffs for the 8th straight year. They're a veteran team. But, team toughness, that's what we keep hearing about Florida. Their reputation, you talk to anyone that sees them, they say they're bullies, they're tough, they fight.
They're in
they
the
punch,
dictionary under that, Hazy.
Exactly. I would think, regardless of the score line, that's probably what the Leafs are preparing for tonight, and the Leafs might feel they have to prove, CJ, is they might not instigate a fight, but if one breaks out, they better be prepared to drop their gloves and do whatever they have to.
Right, and so you get the fighting element, which is possible, and Ryan Reeves is going to play in the game, so that would be one of the guys or the guy for the Leafs you expect to do that. I think that's also almost a mental aspect to it. I mean, one thing Florida does so well is they're very stingy defensively. They don't give you a lot off the rush. There's not a lot of easy offense against them, and so it's, I don't know if we'll call it a test, but it's certainly a chance for some of the Leafs top guys, the Nylanders, the Matthews, Tavares, to kind of get themselves back familiarized with what it's going to take in the playoffs, because we've all seen this year after year, and there's not a lot of ice out there typically. You're not trading chances the way we've seen in some of the other games that have happened recently, just with the way other teams play that the Leafs have come up against. And so I think it's a good test, quite frankly, just to see how they perform in that environment. And we know it's coming again quickly, whether they end up getting Florida or if it's a team like Boston, the Leafs face in the first round. I mean, it's not going to be easy for the top players to have the puck on their stick as much as they like, to get the sort of looks they're going to like to get to produce the offense that's expected of them. So I think I see it being sort of both ends of the sword there. There'll be a bit of a physical challenge, but I think also just for the Leafs top guys, a reminder of how much they're going to have to push through to produce come the spring.
CJ, assuming health, because, you want Rielly to come back, and, Edmondson doesn't sound like he's, coming back. You mentioned this week, but assuming health, like, what do you think that those pairs look like, or at least should resemble on the back end once there is options? Gio comes back, nice scored goal the other day, which is great.
Great to see
great
him.
Story. I mean, we all love Gio. Like, Connor Timmins sniffing around, but when it's all said and done, who do you feel is going to be on the outside looking in, or, based on some of these matchups, there is some options on the back end now for Sheldon to plug and play.
Yeah, and I just don't know if health is going to come into it. I mean, I don't know if they're going to get to a spot where they have all 9 and you're truly choosing the 6 you feel most comfortable with. I think it's safe to say in this scenario you have the 9. I think that Gio and Timmins would be 2 of the guys that you would expect to be sitting to start the playoffs. And then, there's a choice. And where are they at with Brody? Is it Benoit that comes out? Where's Liljegren at? I mean, obviously he's been out here as well. So, I think it's tough to say where they're going to land. And quite frankly, as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, it just feels like the Leafs aren't going to get one game where they have everyone healthy and get to roll out what the game 1 lineup is. I think it's entirely possible the game 1 playoff lineup is one that we haven't seen at all in this last month of the regular season schedule, just because of the various situations there's managing. As I mentioned with Yarncroke, I don't know that we're going to see him before the end of the regular season yet, but if he's healthy enough to go for game 1, I would assume he's one of the 12 forwards that they'd be dressing that night. And so, they're kind of patching together here to get through the season. But one of the things Brad Treliving really was thinking when he went into the deadline and added Lyubushkin and added Edmondson was to give the coaching staff a lot of options. The idea is to get it done by committee. They may not have the best 1 through 4 of the teams they're going to play against when you look at their blue line, but maybe their 6, 7, 8, and 9 is better than what the teams are coming up against are. So I think we're going to see a lot of different playoff looks, and we know Keefe will not hesitate to shake up a lineup or shake up a pairing, shake up a forward line, whatever it's going to be. I think it's going to be a constant rotation, frankly, between now to the end of the season and even once again to the postseason.
CJ, we were talking about Auston Matthews. What number might be important or relevant to him? Do you think it's just 61 and then breeze to the end of the season? 66 to get one ahead of Ovi's career high? Obviously 70 still in play, but what number do you think that he would have as kind of a number where it's, I want to get to that?
You know what's funny, is I didn't know if any of the numbers really matter to him, just because he doesn't really let that out, but it was pretty clear the way he celebrated number 60 that mattered.
Sure.
And good on him, right? But I'm just saying, that was a 3-0 goal at the end of a game the Leafs, had in hand, and he celebrated that in a way that told us that meant something. I would think 66 would hold some appeal. I mean, that would surpass Connor McDavid's 64 from last year. Obviously, the 65 that Alex Ovechkin has on the board, that would be the best goal-scoring season, of any player in this generation, maybe even just the one preceding it. I mean, you're getting back to Gretzky, Lemieux, Hull days if you can get to 66 or above. So I think 66 is probably the next real, number on his radar in terms of if he could get there, that'd be really nice. Of course, if he gets there pretty quickly, there's still a couple games left, he's going to have 70 in his mind because, you're talking an all-time. I mean, this is already all-time, but that's another level up if somehow he goes on a goal binge. I just don't know. We know he can do it in a 9-game sample. He scored 10 goals plenty of times in his career. It's just, I don't know if it matters enough to him right now. I don't know if the Leafs are going to address him for every game. I mean, once the playoff spot's officially clinched, they may opt to sit some of their players down the stretch for a game or two, which we've seen them do in the past. And so 70 might be beyond reach, but I think 66 is probably the next one on his list, because if you could do something Ovechkin, hasn't done during his career, you've obviously, done something pretty special as a goal scorer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, they've got 2 games against Florida, 2 against Tampa. Not that he can't or won't score in those games, but those are legit games. Like, those should have a lot of intensity. And, maybe they're low scoring, maybe they're high scoring, anything's possible. But then you mix in games, Montreal, he's got 2 against Jersey coming up. There's some opportunities with teams that are willing to give up chances where he could fill the net. He could have another hat trick in his future. Feels like he kind of needs one of those to bring 70 back into focus. You put 2 or 3 on the board one night, and then all of a sudden the math starts to spin. But yeah, 60 meant something, as it should. I mean, again, that he became the 9th player all time to have multiple seasons of 60 goals, and we're talking the heaviest hitters in history.
Dude,
like
60's redonk.
It's ridiculous. And
it is.
I wouldn't put it past him to do it again at some point in his career, right? Like, he's still in his prime. I think he's got another 4 or 5 year window where he's likely the undisputed best goal scorer in the game. Bedard might be coming. Bedard might get there in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. And as he ages into his 30s, it might change. But, if he becomes a guy that does it a third time, I want to say only like 4 guys have ever done that. It's like a lot of guys have done it twice, like Bure and Iserman, and or not a lot
now
of guys.
But you're in bossy territory.
Now it's
and
bossy.
Hull's
and Hull.
done it 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Gretzky,
like, you do it 3 times, then you're in a. You just keep cutting names out, and you're in territory that just so few people are even in. And I really wouldn't put it past him the way that he just continues to score at a ridiculous rate. And if he can stay healthy, CJ, I would say the sky's probably the limit for this guy in the next 4 or 5 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the thing that stands out to me is not a lot of it's coming on the power play, right? I mean, he's doing most of it at even strength. He's only got 1 into an empty net this season. There's not a lot of empty calories in that total. I mean, that is fully, truly earned, not to take anything away from anyone who has done it with 8 empty netters, but I think, there is some examples of that from the past. So, he's as dangerous as they come, and I see no reason to think I don't know if he can get to 60 again, because you have to be healthy, and obviously a lot of things have to go your way to get that high. But I wouldn't be betting against him, and I don't see him slowing down from a goal-scoring perspective anytime in the near future.
Do you have a theory on why the road games are so lively, and comparing in contrast to the home games? Like, every Leaf fan's looking at Saturday night and saying that is bedlam. Like, that is something you got to be a part of. It's almost like a bucket list item. I got to get to Buffalo on a weekend to see a Leaf game.
Yeah, and I bet next, this Saturday in Montreal, you'll probably see, not to that degree, but I bet there'll be a huge number of Leaf fans in the building there. I mean, I think it's easier to get tickets, probably a little bit cheaper. And, maybe you're getting fans in the building that don't get to go, too often, if at all, at home. I think that all those things factor in. So we know that the nation is passionate. We know that people out there care, but the truth of the matter is it's hard to get to a game unless you have a hookup or, someone really generous in your life. I mean, I just think a lot of the people that don't get to go to games, if you get to one, I mean, it's pretty special, and you're going to be fired up about it and do the whole tailgate thing and make the most of it. Whereas, a lot of people that go to multiple games a year, it's just, it's like anything. I think that maybe the novelty wears off to a certain degree, or you're not just there for the game, you're doing a business deal or what have you. I mean, all the stereotypes that have been around for 20 or 30 years are pretty well earned. And I think that there's still an aspect of that. That being said, I've been to basically every playoff game that they've played, going back to 2013. The building, there's definitely days and nights where it gets lively here, but it's usually got to be super high stakes, whereas that game against Buffalo, other than the 60th goal by Matthews, was kind of a meaningless game, but man, they brought serious atmosphere, and it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. All right, CJ, enjoy it tonight, Leafs Panthers. It's going to be a fun night, fun few weeks. We're getting closer to go time here. We'll do it again soon. Thank you, buddy.
All right, have a good week.
There's Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. We flash the standings all the time, and it's interesting. The race for the President's Trophy, I guess the favorite right now should be the Rangers. They've won 5 in a row.
Why would you even want to win that? Honestly, it's just like, obviously you want to be just putting the foot on the pedal down the stretch, but to me, winning the President's Trophy, it's like they never win. So it's like,
When's the last
we're
time-
the.
I think
the
that
last
like
time a team did
13 Blackhawks. It was
Yeah.
It was something. It was one of the Blackhawks teams won the President's Trophy and then won the Cup.
Yeah.
But the curse, we just did it during Trade Center. Mike Lane, I was reading over it multiple times. It's like, not only is it very rare for the best team in the league to make the Cup final, obviously it happened with Vancouver in 2010, it happened with Chicago. I think there might have been another example at some point of a team that won it that got to the Cup final and lost. But there's a long history of them losing in the first round, and not even getting out of the first round. But I do think there's a real benefit to it in the East where, like, you look at the disparity, Boston, Florida, Toronto, Tampa, and then on the other side, like Washington and Philly are just backdooring into those teams are not playoff teams. Like, someone's going to get in. And if I'm Carolina, I'd rather that. You give me Washington or Philly in the first round, they will crush those teams.
Anyone
Likely.
will crush them in a 7-game series.
Exactly.
And it's no disrespect. They played hard and you deserve to go to the playoffs, but you're likely
You're probably getting beat up.
kicked in the junk in round one.
Yeah, and I guess that would apply to if you win the President's Trophy, you'll get the second wildcard team, which could be the other one. It could be Philly, Washington, or Detroit, and you'll be a heavy favorite on that. But, it's New York, Carolina, Boston, Florida, Toronto, Tampa. Like, those are the 6 teams. I think we all expect one of them to be in the Cup final, right? Like, one of those 6. I don't think that's out on a limb type of logic right now. But it's really up for grabs because New York is still there. Boston's still there. Dallas is red hot. They've won 7
I was just going to say,
in a
crazy
row.
how Dallas is 1 point behind. They've won
Yep.
7 in a row. Have they been brought up once in the last month as like, hey, like that team could, like,
And
I'm sure
if
they're a
Ottinger goes nuts, they could be
And
sick.
he's starting to, man. He's
But
starting to shut
they're
guys
a really
out.
good team. They're a really good team. Like,
Yeah.
really well coached, everything. They've got everything. But I think they like it that way. I honestly,
Why
God, they're
wouldn't
like,
you?
you guys go
Why
ahead and
wouldn't you?
play and we'll talk about every other team. We're just going to win games and we're just going to do our thing here. And
Yep.
like Dallas, like Vancouver snuck one out. I was watching that game yesterday. They were up Anaheim.
Barely.
They were up 2-0, and Anaheim snuck their way back into it in the third. And then Joshua scored
the
late.
winner, yeah.
Scored late in that game too. But Vancouver at 100 points. And
see-
Colorado at 100 points. Like it's crazy,
Yeah.
Like,
well, the panic, you can feel it in Winnipeg. Is they're doing it again. The same thing they did last year. Awesome through 65 games, and they just melted down the stretch last year. And they've lost 6 in a row. They're not in the divisional race anymore. It's over. They got Nashville's got a chance of catching them. I think it's unlikely. But Winnipeg probably starts in Colorado. It's going to be an incredibly difficult series. But you see Vancouver, the Canucks, are selling clinched T-shirts. That is getting some blowback.
you don't want
I
to
don't
do
know
that.
why you would want to do that.
Listen,
You can't
That's
do
a
that in a
marketing-
Canadian market. You cannot do that in a Canadian market. That's something. I'm not going to name a name, Arizona or whatever, but that's a team in the South that hasn't made the playoffs forever that would be celebrating that. You cannot be a Canadian market.
It's a marketing chart is what it is. It's
Exactly.
a marketing chart.
Who's going to buy, what Vancouver Canuck fan is going to happily walk around with a clinched T-shirt? Like you cannot do that.
No,
I'm
they
sorry.
want a series win. They want a conference final. They
Right.
don't want a clinch
You
T-shirt.
can't have a clinched T-shirt. You can't. Like,
No,
ship those
it-
overseas or so. Get them out. I think it's a bad mojo, bad
Don't
vibe.
they? Isn't there T-shirts that are printed for every championship that the losers, like, for example, who was in the Cup final last year? I'm drawing a blank. Vegas and who?
Yeah,
Florida.
Yeah,
So
Vegas and Florida, of course.
Yeah, so there would have been Florida Panther Stanley Cup T-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard they get like shipped, to
yeah, other
third world
places around
countries
the
or
world.
something.
Absolutely.
There's a guy walking around with a Florida Panthers Cup win T-shirt on
Yeah.
right now. Like,
And there
that-
will be in a week a Canucks clinched T-shirt somewhere around the world where you're like, that's probably where it should be.
right.
You can't do that in a Canadian market.
But
It's exciting. They made the playoffs. They haven't been in the playoffs in a long time. Be excited. But a clinched T-shirt, like how many of those are being bought? How many do you think?
I'm sure there are people, but I will say
Who would
that
want that?
there are people that are fired up because nobody at the start of the season, I'm sure people in Vancouver that are loyal to that team was like, hey, if all things fall together, we can make the playoffs, we can squeak in. Nobody saw this.
Nobody.
I mean,
it's an incredible story.
They've had
Incredible.
an amazing season, and who knows, they can go deep in the playoffs. They're a hell of a team. They're a really good team.
They're really fun to watch.
Team.
They're a really good team.
Yeah.
I'm not downplaying any of that. I love what they've done this year. They're an awesome story. If you're a Canucks fan, you should be so jacked they made the playoffs because they have not in the longest time. And it was not really expected to happen in September. But you can't have a T-shirt. You can't have a Canucks T-shirt, man. You can't have that. All right, Richard Griffin coming up on the Jays weekend down in Tampa. What we can expect out of Bowden Francis on the mound tonight. The lineup's out. Bichette's not playing. So Bo's neck spasms, I guess, are carrying over to Houston. He's not in the lineup tonight. More on that with Griff in about a half an hour. Masters.
My guy, Ernie Clement.
Ernie Clement's got wheels, man. Ernie.
Dude, the Jeter throws from Ernie, my guy.
I love Ernie Clement. And this is probably aging myself, and it's never going to happen. But doesn't his nickname in the room have to be Wit? Like, doesn't it have to be Ernie Wit Clement? Like, if you're an old school Jay fan, he's got to be nicknamed Wit.
You think so?
Yes. Ernie Witt was the man. I loved
Ernie
Witt.
Witt with that cookie duster and the chew, and like he was gorgeous.
He was
Witt.
Dude,
gorgeous behind.
When we were kids, Hayes, everybody thought Ernie Witt was the greatest catcher like in the history of baseball, and no one was ever better. Kelly Gruber,
totally
third
agree.
base, was he was the best. They were all the best players on earth
Of all time. Like,
yes.
Probably the first Blue Jay I can remember when I would have been 4 or 5 years old was Ernie Witt.
Dude, anytime I play shortstop, I go underhand sidearm, and I just go like this to Tony Fernandez.
Tony Fernandez. Yeah,
gorgeous.
You have to. Turning double plays with Manny Lee.
Yeah, and his knuckles would touch his shoelaces when he was tossing it over to first.
Man, he was unreal.
Amazing.
Unreal, Tony. Yeah, he's got to be Witt. Ernie Witt Clement. Great start for him, and he's back in the lineup today, playing short, as he should be. Ernie Clement making a name for himself. I love it. So Rich Griffin coming up. Something to chew on brought to you by Boston Pizza still to come as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Something to chew on brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beers always dialed in for game time. Hustle into your local BP tonight. We say this often, but tonight is the definition of a Boston Pizza night. Where you got the Leaf game, the Blue Jay game, you got Iowa versus LSU, right? You got Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, massive game on the women's side of the bracket. It's going to be an awesome night.
Wasn't there some animosity last year with like a hand signal in front of the eyes
Lots
and some
of
nonsense?
smack talk.
There was,
I love it. I love it.
It's exactly what you want in pro sports. You know, it's disappointing that this is not, the championship game, but it's still what you want is Iowa versus LSU, Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, the two faces of their respective programs, both great players. They're calling it the Bird v. Magic of the women's game, and you can't ask for anything more than that. You need rivalries, you need history, you need redemption on the line. It's everything that makes sports great tonight, so it should be a great, great game. Something to chew on, we're asking, considering what's going on with a lot of great players, right? There's certain things, and I think we should do this at some point, like try to establish how many undisputed, truths there are in pro sports. In other words, McDavid is the undisputed best player in the game. Matthews, the undisputed best goal scorer. How many more reside in the NHL? But we're asking, who is the undisputed number one athlete in their respective sport right now? Connor McDavid in the NHL. Nikola Jokic, who's going to win his third MVP in 4 years. Denver's doing it again. Jokic is an absolute freak.
Yeah, he is.
Scottie Scheffler.
Is he going to win the MVP again?
Yeah, he's a heavy favorite. Last time I checked on FanDuel, like they're back atop the West. Like Denver's the team to beat. I think everyone expects
to deal with.
Exactly. And Embiid, I think, is coming back this week, but exactly. Embiid's out. Shea's been in the running. Gilgeous-Alexander's been great. There's others that have had great years. But McDavid, Jokic, Scheffler, Mahomes. Like, who do you think holds the title as the undisputed number one of those four?
I'm going to say Connor McDavid is 1A and Mahomes is 1B as like the definitive best player. But I almost want to
Yeah.
lean Mahomes because of the championship.
Well, that's what it is. The championships define a lot of things, but
Okay, it's Mahomes. Sorry.
Yeah, but
sorry,
what
McJesus, it's Mahomes.
is it McDavid's fault his team hasn't won a Stanley Cup? Yeah, he hasn't.
It's not, Noodles, but it means a lot to Mahomes.
But he's the best
to
player
what he
in
does,
the world.
that he kind of gets it done, man.
Like you're right. Mahomes gets it done, but you could argue, that in Kansas City there are weapons. He's got a rock star coach. He's got Kelsey. He's got where I guess McDavid has Draisaitl, but you could argue. I think McDavid's the clear cut number one hockey player. Is
no question.
Mahomes the clear-cut number one football player?
Yes.
So, yes. So then
I don't think it's – I don't see how there's
Jokic
any argument.
Is Jokic –
I think Jokic should have that title. I think Jokic would be further down my list because you could argue, Giannis, if he's on his game, Embiid is still incredibly dominant. Maybe you look at Luka. Like, he's a pure big. But I don't see how you move off Jokic. Like, if he's going to win his third MVP in 4 years, that is just an unbelievable run. And they've won a title, too.
Was Ohtani on that list?
No, Ohtani wasn't included. He could be.
It's an interesting one.
It is, but I think with him not pitching right now, I don't know if his bat alone would get him there. I think if he's pitching, then he should and would be included. Scheffler's interesting, too, but the live element kind of takes him out of this conversation as the number one guy on this list. But he's clearly the best golfer on tour. Like, it's not even close. Like, McIlroy doesn't feel like he's in the same stratosphere as Scheffler, Thomas, Schauffele, Cantlay. But could Koepka be? I think he could on any given week. John Rahm, I think probably still could.
He's going to be fascinating to watch at the Masters because you want to talk about a guy that just fell off the face of the earth on the golf planet. I haven't seen him hit one shot.
John Rahm? No, me neither.
It's just like this guy went from every Saturday and Sunday in contention to being one of the faces of the PGA Tour. I haven't seen the guy hit a golf shot because I can't stand watching that nonsense tour over there. Like, you can talk about the leaderboards on the PGA Tour. I'm watching it any day of the week over that garbage.
Yeah, me too.
The leaderboard and the music, I don't know. I just can't do it. I can't watch it.
I would say then, if you're talking what all you've laid out, then it's Mahomes. Mahomes has got to be clear cut then, right? Because of the championships and him being the best football player on the planet.
Right, and he is as good at his sport as McDavid is at his. Make no mistake. Like, Mahomes is legitimately in the conversation for greatest of all time right now. I think it's a bit premature, but that's basically because of longevity. But for me, the answer is Mahomes. Like, he is the number one undisputed because he's done it in every single scenario where, yes, Noodles, you're right. Like, McDavid is somewhat of a victim of the fact that his team hasn't been good enough or they've played teams that have been better. But I would argue the Chiefs ran into that this year, right? This was the year they were supposed to lose to Buffalo, lose to Baltimore, lose to the Niners, and Mahomes didn't allow for it. Their defense helped. Reed helped. But I don't think it should be it shouldn't be taken away from Mahomes because he has won. I don't think you can balance out the playing field just because we've seen one guy do something in a scenario where the other guy hasn't had the ability to even try to prove he can do it in the same situation. And I think that applies to the whole GOAT conversation. It's totally arbitrary, obviously. And I see these conversations popping up all the time. Like, is McDavid the greatest player of all time? You can make the argument in terms of, and we've had this conversation, and the Quizmaster said it, the most evolved and the best skater, and he
loves that line, the quiz.
Yeah, most evolved.
And it makes a lot of sense. I understand that. Yeah. But for me, if you don't win, like, if you don't have the championships on top of all the statistics and the production, I can't even have that conversation.
No, you can't. As being the greatest ever, no way.
You can't. You cannot be in a team sport or an individual sport and never have won the ultimate prize.
By the way, what about the numbers? If you're going to go ahead and call McJesus the greatest of all time, well, go ahead and look at you pumped out a stat last week. 11 times Gretzky in a row had 100 assists.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about somebody doing it once. This guy did it 11 years in a row. I can't stand when people forget about what Gretzky's done in the past. Because whatever stat you want to talk about, Gretzky's got it 15 times over. It's ridiculous what he's got.
You're right, but this is where I want more your opinion on this, too. Isn't Mike Trout arguably one of the greatest baseball players who's ever? He will win nothing.
Yes, he won't. You're right.
win
He won't win a
0,
thing.
right? But he will still be gone down as one of the greatest ball players to ever win, correct? So
To
that's
ever
where
play
the argument.
based on his statistics and his
Or,
numbers.
sorry,
and
not to win, to play,
wins
yes.
above replacement and all that, undoubtedly.
So is he? But he's a victim of his circumstance, basically. Now he can change that. He can put his hand up and say, "Get me the hell out of here! I want to go down the road. I want to go to the Dodgers. I want to go."
Yep.
But he doesn't, right? So that's where I think the argument changes. Is in a team sport, you're only as good as the guys around you, even though you're a great player. Trout, whoever, you name it.
Man, those Angels got their ass handed to them against
But
the
they will
Dodgers.
again. Like
They
that's
stink. They're terrible.
Didn't
They
he hit the first
suck
home run
so
of the
bad.
season?
Yes, he did.
And they lost 11-3 or something like that. Like
It was
that.
a classic Angel stat line where Mike Trout hit a home run. He went something like 3 for 4, and no other starters had a hit.
Dude,
And
I'm
they lost
telling you,
11-3.
this is the year he's going to end up in the Phillies. The Phillies are going to pull the trigger on Mike Trout, and he's going to be there for a playoff run this year.
I don't know why he wouldn't do that already, though. Oh,
Dude,
like this
but
was
I
the
know,
year
but I
Ohtani
think
left.
Ohtani leaving, and then he's just like, I know he said he wants to honor the contract, but I could see him this year after 2 or 3 months of this saying, okay, the joke is really over now. And he's a Philly guy, and he'll go back to Philly and play there. I guarantee Bryce Harper's in his ear right now.
I hope he does. Like he has given everything he can to that organization, that market, that fan base.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are certain situations where guys jump too early, or guys are take the easy way out. Talk to Kevin Durant about that. I think talk to LeBron, taking his talents to South Beach. He took the easy way out. It worked out for him. It was a brilliant decision. He got 2 rings, whatever.
Right.
Went to 4 straight NBA finals, but he took the easy way out. Kevin Durant took the easy way out. There have been other scenarios like that in football, hockey, baseball. Trout has not. Like that ship sailed years ago, man. That guy tried to make it work. He waited for it to work. If he decides he wants out and goes somewhere else and wins, no one's going to say you bailed or how dare you. Nobody would do that with Mike Trout, so I hope he does it. I hope he goes.
I hope so too. I just think it's good, having top players getting opportunities, but it's just, that's where the argument comes into because people are like, well, he's never won. Well, but he's still arguably one of the best, baseball players who ever played the game.
Yep.
But, winning attached to it is very, if you base your opinion on that, then he's never going to get to the top of some people's lists just based on winning.
Yeah, and from that standpoint, I'm sorry. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, right? It's like you got to have a separate conversation where if you're talking simply production and player and talent, you can have it. But when you get into the greatest of all time, that's where the narrative starts to seep in, and you talk about accolades, and you talk about clutch gene, and you talk about what they did in the biggest moments. Like, that's what sports is all about. We talked about this an hour ago when we were unveiling our Leaf list. I can't have Matthews as the greatest Leaf of all time if he never wins in the playoffs. You can't.
Right.
Like that, you have to perform in the playoffs. You have to. And it's interesting when you look at the Canadian teams. We'll get into this in the next hour. I was thinking about it over the weekend. Like legacy, maneuvers within their own ranks in Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Vancouver, where Toronto hasn't won a cup in so long, Winnipeg never has, Vancouver never has. It's like if Toronto, Winnipeg, Vancouver were to win a cup, their best players, I think, immediately skyrocket to probably GOAT status. But it's not going to happen in Edmonton. Like if the Oilers won the cup, it's still Gretzky, right? I don't think Draisaitl passes Messier. It just speaks to what they accomplished in the 80s. All right, Richard Griffin coming up on the Jays in Houston. Masters coming up from the rink. Leafs Panthers tonight. We'll tee that up. Our best bet still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, every day we announce a current or former Maple Leaf player, and by the end of the week, there's a 5-pack of players, and we're giving away tickets this week to see the Leafs play the Penguins April 8th. Plus, throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro Canada. Today's player of the day is good one, Randy Carlyle. Good one, Randy.
Right.
Good one. Good one, Randy Carlyle.
Good one, Randy. Good one.
Bozy late picking you up, Phil?
Good one, Randy.
Good one, Randy. Good one.
That was the outdoor game too, I think.
Just to have the jam to say that to a coach, to talk to a coach like that. Like, as much as you hate the coach sometimes, like, I would have never said that to I've said some stuff to Paul Maurice and Lavi behind closed doors, but to just be like, you never talk like that. It's just funny.
Basically,
Such an idiot here.
Yeah. Just, hey, good one. Good one, Randy. Good one.
Love it, though.
Couldn't be more sarcastic. Like, shut up, Randy. Get out of the room.
Like, just be quiet because I run this place. That's what that comment was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the end of the road for Phil, I guess.
I know. It sucks, eh? Like, I kind of was hoping that kind of just came and gone at the deadline. You know, like he didn't get Vancouver decided to move past him. It sucks. But his career's over at the NHL
that's
level.
it. The NHL. I mean, I wonder if Phil would play in the Europe or the American
No
League.
way, dude. No way.
No? Okay. Maybe the World Championship team. Maybe the Americans call him up. You know, maybe that's the end of the road for Phil.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, maybe not.
Dude, when you get to the end of the line like this, you got to have the Gary Roberts approach to stay alive. Because if you don't, the fitness game catches up to you, just like Father Time, where it's like, because of his history, people know it doesn't take it that seriously. Still a hell of a player, did amazing things, but it catches up to you at this age, and it's like game over.
Yeah, that's the end of the road for Phil. All right, final hour. Jays Houston tonight. Leafs Panthers tonight. Our best bet still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.